washing my hands, but
so, hello everyone. We're going to make the Fox Cub in sugar, and his Fox and Cub in sugar is a picture of the piece. And the first thing we've got to do is divide our, or take off 40 grams of your main ball of orange. So we're going to start by taking the 40 grams ball of orange paste and roll it, as usual, into an elongated cone shape. So I'm just going to hold one palm of the hand. The ball's going to go into the palm of the hand, and then your dominant hand, we're going to roll against this part here, just pressing a little bit more on one side. What we're trying to do is create an elongated cone, which is going to be curved around, and the head will be sitting on this part. So when I've rolled the length of this, it's coming in with its fat bottom just coming to the just short of the 7 centimeter mark, 2.5 inches. And this is going to be curved. And we're going to mark in, using the bone modeling tool, we're going to mark in a thigh, a nice thigh crease. So you can use, well, you could just use a kebab stick if you wanted to, but I think either end, probably the large end of the bone modeling tool would be best. Start with the bone modeling tool at about midway, press in and then rock around. So you're marking in a little crease, which we can close up slightly on this side. Okay. If you prefer, you could use a cocktail stick or a kebab stick. So I'll just show you, I'll redo that so you can see. It gives a deeper marking, which I'm not 100% sure of. You could also use the back of a paintbrush if you prefer. So ball, make sure it's nice and crack free. Elongated cone. About 7 centimeters in length. This part here is going to be curved. Just wondering if it would be better to actually, no, we do want it tapering, so this is better. So it would be coming in there. Your cocktail stick will give it a bit of a deeper mark, and I think it's harder to actually rock around. So I think this is probably better. Okay, so that's giving you the thigh. So this part will be the thigh. And then that can go on your board. When you're positioning this, just make sure that you have actually got enough room for the little fox, the little cub, his head and his tail's coming around. So I'm feeling like it's going to be placed almost centrally. Okay, so the next bit is we want to make a little platform for the head to rest. So at the moment, it's probably going to kind of rock off here. We don't mind it at a slight angle, but I just want to press in a little step just so it levels it off a little bit. If I turn that on its side, you can see I haven't flattened it that much, but I have created a step. And if I was measuring that, it's about 2 centimeters in. So just maybe to your first knuckle on your pointing finger. And that will be a good platform for the head. And then we're going to put a little bit of glue onto that platform. But also, I know I've got a little tail going on from about here. So I'm going to start by just putting a thin streak of glue, and I can press down a bit more to get a little bit more glue onto this part here, which is where the tail's going to go. I show you, because this tail is loose on here, so you can see how that's going to fit. It's narrow to start with, and it's going to kind of sit in like that. Okay, so just a little bit of glue around that area there. And then we can go to one of our other balls of paste. And we're going to break off a bit for the tail. Now, as with all the models that we make, we always have to do a bit of a size guide. So I just pulled off a rough piece of paste and just see if that is going to be sufficient to go on there as the foxtail. So that looks okay. And the measurement for that is just under 2.5 centimeters on the ruler. And if you're using a scale, it's going to be, I would say 7 grams, 7.5. It depends how specific your scales are, but nearer the 7 than the 8 grams, just to make sure you've got enough paste really. And this is going to have, so we want to make sure that's nice and warmed up. Give it a good twist, squidge, roll tightly between your palms. And then using the heel of your hand, you're going to roll an elongated cone. And if you want to, you can actually flatten the fat ends just by placing it down on the surface so it's upright, and just press a little bit so it flattens it off. And that area would be where the white fluffy part of the tail would go. And this can then be placed with the narrow end towards the fat bottom end here. And then we can come round, and I think it'd be quite nice to have that come out a little bit. So it's kind of comfortably wrapped around. So the remaining paste in that second third that you're using will be for the head. And again, I'm going to mock it up because I'm not sure, so I should do it roughly with my fingers. Yeah, it's probably about right. I'm thinking maybe I'll take just a little bit more. So if you're not sure, you can add. As a ruler, that's going to give you, again, just over 2.5 centimeter diameter and 14 grams, 14, 15 grams. So warm up nicely. Now, I think it's better on this to actually roll a very fat cone. So we want to hold it quite tight at an angle so that we only get a little peak at one side, but it's quite fat. But we need to do that after we've widened the head a little bit. So I'm going to start by rolling the ball flat so it becomes an oval. Okay, so my hand was flat rather than at an angle. And then at this tip here, you could pinch it out, but if we can, somehow we need to get a little pointed nose. It looks a bit like a chestnut. Okay, so as an oval, I'll show you that again. So as a ball, roll a couple of times with your hands fairly flat so you've got an oval shape, sideways oval. And the point is going to be in the center of the widest part here. And if you turn that so it drops down into your two hands and roll side to side to create, you can turn it round to create a little nose or point. So it will look a little bit like a chestnut. It's fat. Mine's got a crack in, so I'm just going to use my finger to fill in that. If you wanted to, you can just roll a ball and roll it into a fat cone. It doesn't matter. We can do the, you can try it that way as well. So ball, get your point. So it's really, 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 really fat, tiny peak, a bit like a rose cone, I suppose. And then, so if you haven't created an oval at this stage, you now have to do it. So I think this is actually a harder way of doing it. Okay, as long as it's wider here and you've got a little peak. With my finger or thumb, I'm going to press, so here's the nose, I'm going to press an indentation on either side, so creating recessed parts where the eye sockets are going to go. So it's a bit more, the head's quite tricky on this. So it just looks a bit ghostly, like an alien. And then I'm going to stroke the center of his nose so it becomes a bit flatter and extend the pointed end of his nose. So we've got our indentations either side, and then flatten the bridge of his nose and extend the point. So I'll just show you the profile of that. So we can position the head onto the body now. And I'm thinking possibly we don't need any support. If you do, then you could put a small piece of spaghetti into that platform that you've pressed down just to support it. But it'll be so small, it could end up being a choking hazard. And because this isn't that weighty, it should just simply sit happily onto that wedge. Okay, I'll just show you from the back. So this is kind of his shoulder underneath there, if you like. I'm sitting that on there. Could make it come down just a fraction. It's got 2 legs that will go in a short while. And once you've got the head positioned, we can start to make some marks where we want the ears and nose to go. So right at the tip here, I'm just going to use my cocktail stick to gently drill a hole and open that up. It's just above the point. And knowing that my ears are going to go in here, just open up a hole, and the same on the other side. Open up a hole. You don't have to lift yours up. I'm just doing that so you can see. So they're the only markings that we need on there, and those can actually have a little bit of glue ready, starting to melt the paste so that it becomes tacky rather than slippery. And that should hold the paste when you add it later. You can also put a little bit of glue onto the end of the tail, because that's where his white fluffy bit will be. Okay, so marking the nose and ears, bit of glue in each and the tip of the tail. So I've just got my brown. I'm going to take off very small amounts for this. This is going to be for the 2 front feet. And I would say you probably want a small 1 centimeter ball, nothing big. They have quite dainty feet. That is not even going to register on the scale. So just pea size, large pea, processed pea size. And match the 2 balls so they're the same size before you start. His hind legs don't show. They're kind of under his body, curled under. Just a little bit more. So yeah, about a centimetre. So as a ball, roll it into a cone shape using your finger. Give it 1 little tap just so that it's not too rounded. And then we're going to use a cocktail stick just to mark in 2 claws. So I've got that rested over my finger. I start at the top here and just rock the pointy part of the cocktail stick. So you're pressing down in and rock backwards. And then if you just tap it 1 more time, you'll end up with a cute little opened paw. And they are going to sit under the chin. The second one, it's ball again, cone shape. Tap it to flatten. Just rest it on your finger, a bit of corn flour if you're worried it's going to stick, and start with the pointy end. And so the narrow end of the cocktail stick is going to come just off center and rock backwards. Press, move to the other side and just press and rock backwards again. Give it one little tap to make the claws open a little bit. And that is your second paw. And this can be placed. Then I haven't glued them on, but if you're concerned about when you lift it off, you could actually place a bit of glue on the body where it's going to make contact. I'm feeling possibly this one might want to come round a little bit like that. Because one paw will be under coming out and the other one will be stretched a little bit coming out this side. For the ears, I'm just going to roll 2 balls of the brown paste, and they are measuring probably just over ½ centimetre, so they're not huge. You don't have to make these in the dark brown. They do look nice in the dark brown. They could be in the same colour as the fox itself. And often the ears are quite tall, aren't they? Because when you look at them looking at you, their ears are kind of turning round like radar. So you can make them taller if you'd prefer as well, but I'm just going to make them as triangles. So we've got a little ball into a cone shape. And then I'm just going to squeeze to flatten it slightly, but then set the fat end down onto the surface just to flatten it a little bit as well. So you end up with this shape. We'll do the same with the other one. Sometimes it's very difficult to get this kind of quantity off a bigger piece of paste. So it's better to work with a large piece and just make that come to a point, then pull off what you need, and then you can roll it between your fingers. But make sure if you've rolled your 2 balls that you re-warm them up before you shape, because they might become cracky. So ball, elongated cone, press to flatten slightly, and then the fat end placed down on the surface, just kind of catch it with the surface so it straight or flattens it a little bit, and that is your little ear. And to put those on, I'm just going to change camera. You've already got your glue on the model, so you should be able to just simply bring the ear to the glued part of the hole and drop those in place. If you're concerned that they're not going to stick, you can use the small end of your bone modeling tool. Be careful not to press the head so you make a mark, but you can just kind of support the back, press the bone modeling tool into the bottom part of the ear and down a fraction, which will force a bit of the paste to go into the glued indent that you made. So we'll start by putting the white markings on his, oh, it's all falling apart, on the forehead, and he did have 2, this one's fallen off, 2 on this side. So they kind of double up as whiskers, if you like, or they have like a beard, don't they, on the side, kind of furry bit. And then we'll make a larger comb for the bit that goes on his tail. So they're quite straightforward to make. Just make sure that you haven't got any brown left, residue brown paste on your hands. I'm going to take a little bit of glue and paint just a little gentle line down his forehead and just a couple of dots on the sides of his cheeks, so kind of halfway down. And we've already glued the end of the tail, so we should be fine with that. take a ball of paste, just a small ball, and then make it come to a point and tease out a small little ball. So this is tiny. It's only about 3 mil in thickness. This is going to be turned into a cone, but I'm going to just use it as a size guide to get 4 further balls for his side whiskers. Try and match the sizes. It doesn't matter too much, but it is going to make it look nicer if it's the same size. So this larger piece can be the one in the middle. Just take a little ball, the little ball into your palm, use your finger and just run it forwards and backwards a couple of times on your palm, and you'll find it will come to a bit of a point. It's like an elongated cone. And this one, with the pointy end facing down towards the nose end, is going to just sit on the center there. Looks like an exclamation mark. And then we do the same again with the side whiskers. We want it to be rounded at one end. So if you just position your finger at one side of that ball, you should be able to roll it with and keep one end plump. You can also roll it between your fingers if that helps, if that makes it easier. And these would attach to the side of his face with the pointed end innermost. This is looking a little bit on the long side, so I'm just going to make it slightly more plump. You can roll it between your fingers. So lengthwise, about 1/2 centimetre. They're actually super fiddly, the details. And if you don't like the size of it, if you prefer it to be bigger, then you can, of course, re-roll your balls, make them larger. Just make sure you have, in fact, got the glue on the head before you try and stick. Struggling to pick them up. These are something like your cutting wheel or a little palette knife would work quite well for this. So I've got a little ball of paste, white paste here, which is a 1.5 centimetre. I like to make a fluffy tail. They have big bushy tails. So 2.5 grams, between 2 and 3 grams. And we'll just roll it into a nice crack-free, warmed up ball. And then you can either use your heel of your hand to roll the point to create a cone, or you can just pinch between your finger and thumb, just making it plump at one end. When you do it this way though, just try and kind of be a bit more even with your pressure around so that you can take out the finger marks. And this will need to be just a little bit flattened, because if you remember, we actually flattened the tip of his towel, the orange part. And we can turn the point at a bit of an angle. Just use your thumb as a curving guide. And that can then sit just on the end there. Kind of following the contour. So we're going to use our last bundle of orange to create the little fox cub. And depending on how big you want him, I mean, you've got quite a bit of paste possibly. So if you want to, you can make him larger. I'm thinking I'll make him slightly bigger. He looks cute small, but I feel like I want to be generous with my paste. So the body size I'm going to use is 2.5 centimetre diameter, and as a weight, about 10 grams. Okay, and we can just give that a good old warm up. Roll it tightly into a ball shape, and then we're going to roll it into an elongated cone. And what's nice about seeing the breakdown of how this character is put together means that really you could do a whole scene of fox cubs clambering all over different positions, falling off a cake, you know, head first in a rabbit hole. You know, there's so much you could actually do to make it a whole full scene with lots of junior cubs, mummy and daddy cub. So I've got my little cone, and that is about 4 centimeters, 1.5 inches. And this will be his back. If I put a little dot there, I know that that's his tail. And then coming in from the side using the cocktail stick, I'm going to press but turn at the same time. So we want to make this indentation, which is going to be resembling his thigh. If you prefer, you could use the small end of the bone modeling tool, which will give you a similar marking, and that's already curved, so you might find that a little bit easier to use. And then just going to even that up because I pressed it a little bit lower on one side than the other. Let's just come in, just mark that. So now I've got, this is his back. We've got his 2 thigh marks in there, and this now can sit onto the back, and we'll have this leaning over. Just going to press it down a little bit so there's a bit more fat, because we want a little platform here for the head to go on. And we can put a little bit of glue onto that platform, maybe just a touch on the back, ready to secure the head in a short while. Just flatten his back out a little bit as well. So the head for your little cub is going to be created in exactly the same way, but you are using a smaller piece of paste. So depending on how big your body is, if you take just a small ball of paste and kind of hold it up against to see if you think that it is actually going to be the right size, and then you can shape it even and give it a bit of a test out. So I'm thinking initially I'm going to go for just over 1.5 centimeters, so nearly 2 centimeter ball of paste, and in terms of weight that is about 5 grams. Okay, and if we warm that up, and I'll just move that out of the way so I can show you how to formulate this or create this piece. It's going to be the same as before, rolling a couple of times to make it into an oval shape. And then you might, because it's small, you might find it easier to pinch in the point for his nose. And that probably has given you a little area either side that you can press in. And this time you could use the large end of the bone modeling tool just to start that off, and finish by just smoothing using your thumb or your finger, because it's just a smaller version of what you've made already for the main fox character. And we can just bring the nose to a point. We'll rock it a little bit if you feel like you've lost the width. Whoops. Curl his nose up. And we can attach the head. It's probably easier to attach the head first before you go ahead and start to put all the features on. And just make this come over. I can have it twisted slightly if I want to. That looks quite cute. It was just resting its chin on Mummy's back and kind of slightly tilted towards her face. And while you're there, we can drill the holes in as we did before for the nose. And just open up a socket for the ears. It's kind of just poke the cocktail stick in and then just leave it up and down a couple of times so you get a nice opening. And those areas can have a little bit of glue. And we could put some glue on the tail hole or just where the tail's going to sit on his bottom. The tail, I think a ball that's just over 1 centimetre to 1.5 centimetre diameter. This may not even register on the scales, but we'll give it a go. It's about 2.5 grams, 3 grams or 2 grams will probably be fine. You can just try it. It's a Maltese, slightly smaller than a Malteser ball size. So I'm just going to use the palm of my hand to hold the paste and the other to roll my elongated cone as I did before. And if you remember, the narrow end is the bit that attaches to the body, and the fatter end is going to be where the bushy white part of his tail will be. It's formed into a bit of a subtle S shape that's quite nice. And then we can just place that so it wraps around his bottom. I'll put the tail hole in the wrong place, haven't I? Just smooth that out. We could have it coming from there. There we go. That looks quite nice, actually. So for the paws, I would go just under 0.5 centimetre. That won't register on the scales at all. Less than 1 gram. And just make 4 balls the same size. You could make the front paws slightly smaller if you wanted to. And as before, start by warming up the paste and just rolling it into a bit of a cone shape or teardrop shape. Give it 1 little tap. That just flattens it a little bit because it looks a bit funny when it's quite rounded. And then using a cocktail stick, the narrow end, you're going to push in from the top and just rock back a little bit. So it's the same process as before, you're just making a really tiny one. Give it 1 little tap and that should kind of flatten it slightly more and open the claws. You'll need to have a little bit of glue, just maybe either side, just near under the cheeks. just enough to hold it, but not to make the brown bleed. And then we can pop those in. So into a ball, into a teardrop shape, tap to flatten, press and rock, press and rock. And we can, well, I've already put a little touch of glue here. We can just pop that one on too. If you find when you're handling them that they misshape, then you can just use your cocktail stick to mark in the claw again. And then we'll do the same for the back paws. And to secure those, a little bit of glue onto the body, or if it's going to stay on the surface, you could actually put the glue on the surface. And we'll just ease those in using a palette knife or something else to help guide it. I'm going to turn that so it's facing forward a little bit more. And we can do one for the other side as well. Adding a little bit of glue where it's going to attach. So we want tiny pieces for the ears. I think probably again, maybe even a little bit smaller than the balls you did for his paws. So probably 3 mil as a ball, and create your little teardrop shape. Just going to change camera. And give it a tap to flatten and pick it up. So you've got the fat end that can just be caught onto the surface. And you've already put a bit of glue, so that should be able to just simply transfer with the fat end down onto his head. Okay, and then we can do the same with the second one. So into a ball, into a cone, tap to flatten, peel off, flatten the end, and transfer onto his head. I'm going to make these just slightly taller. So just narrower and taller, makes him look a bit cuter. And we're going to move on to the white to create the whiskers and the bit that goes down the forehead and the tail. So your hands will need a bit of a clean up before you do that. So you're making sure your hands are quite clean before you handle the whites, and also that you've glued. So we're just going to put a little dot on his forehead there and just either side for his whiskers, and a little bit on the end of his tail. Now these are tiny, so it's possible that it's better to do this just as balls and then maybe draw the cocktail stick through the ball. I'll show you what I mean. So just take a slightly larger ball of white paste and pull off the tiniest, maybe 1 mil ball. They're absolutely tiny. So we're going to do two, we want 4 and then 1 more. So you've a fit one for the forehead. Try to keep them all similar size. So if you've got a bigger one, then pick that up and just maybe give it 1 roll And because the fat from the paste should be on your finger, it should be just slightly sticky enough to hold that little patch while you then simply transfer onto. So you could make it as a cone as if you wanted to, but this one's gone on just kind of like a grain of rice. And the other ones here, if I take, you could roll them again into rice shapes and stick them on. If you wanted to, again, you could actually use your cocktail stick to kind of press on, and that would make a dividing mark in the center there. Just going to reset the camera just so that that shows. Yes, it's more of a device to hold it on, but try and make them into kind of fat rice grains. And if you've got one that's longer than the other, you can pop that. Oops. This one's a little bit long. So hopefully that will just pick up on my finger, and then I can transfer to where I've glued. And to make sure it sticks, we can use the cocktail stick just to press into the center. It's just an option, really. And we can do the same on the other side. Just turn the character around so it makes it easy for you to. So that's one without markings, and the other where you've got a press. You can choose what you prefer. I'm going to match these up. Okay, so the next thing is to put the white fluffy end to the tail. And I'm using about 1 centimeter ball for that. I'm going to pinch out. And again, it's quite nice to have a little bit of a curve shape to that. And that can be simply placed at the end where you've already glued. You could change the direction if you want to, have a bit of a play, see what you like. Could be up. So we've got a couple of choices with the eyes. I've actually got these sugar pearls. So if you wanted to, these are 2mm pearls that you could use. And I'm just going to show you what they look like. So you can decide on whether you want to make balls with your paste, or if you want to make it look like he's sleeping. Quite cute. So I can show you. Let's just have a look so you don't ruin your own creation. The holes only need to be made if you're putting balls on. So a little bit of glue on those 2 little markings. Find a fine brush rather than use a really fat brush. And this one, I'm going to put a little kind of dot where the sleeping eyes are going to go. So I'm going to make the junior awake and the mummy fox asleep. So the balls themselves, these 2mm black balls, are perfect for eyes. You do need the glue. And you want to find 2 that are the same size. And they can just, with a little bit of glue, they can just be popped in. Oh, so cute. And if you were making balls using the black paste, you'd need to bring that to a bit of a point, take the smallest amount off the end, and then roll the paste between your finger, drop that down and create another ball until you've got two that match. Now, what I often find with this, especially if your black paste is fairly dry, is that it tends to crumble. So I'm just wiping my fingers on a slightly dampened J cloth, not too wet. And then when I pull that off, the moisture should go into the paste a little bit and just help you roll the shape that you want. If you're making the sleeping eyes, then they can be slightly bigger. Again, match the sizes. The two balls, that's a solid ball. And then just take one onto your hand and roll on one side, so you end up with a cone. And the fat end, so we just tap that, it should hold on to my finger long enough for me to transfer onto the tiny amount of glue. We've got to be really careful that you don't over glue it, and that can then just transfer to make him look like he's asleep. We'll go again. Once these are on, try not to fiddle, because if you have got glue on there, you don't want it to bleed. So tap, so it momentarily attaches to your finger. Transfer. And then if you want to, you can just very gently use your cocktail stick to curve the ends down to make him look cute. And the noses are using the black sugar paste. The nose for the mummy is going to be about 1/2 centimetre into a ball, into a cone, and the pointy end of the cone is going to go into the nose hole, which you've already glued. Just reform that because it dropped. So ball into a cone, pointy end goes in, and have the nose so it's pointing up towards the ceiling, so it's vertical rather than horizontal. So it looks nice when it's upright. And we'll do the same with the little one, but I would say maybe a 3mm ball, because you've got to roll a cone out of it. So some of that will be inside the hole of the nose. And then I can just drop in there again, facing upwards so that it's got a more cute appeal. And there you have your little Fox Club. Fox and Cub. Okay, so here he is. I hope you've enjoyed making the Fox and the Cub, and I hope to see you again soon. If you want the kit list for this, it's just going to be shared shortly. So here is the kit list, and if you've got any questions, please feel free to contact me on hannah@inspiredcreations.uk.com. Look forward to seeing you all again soon. Take care. Bye-bye for now.